What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined as always by my dad Sean, and today reactions to the classics. We got a review of Elliott Smith and his posthumous record From a Basement on the Hill, and this comes courtesy of a suggestion from our longtime patron and friend here at the channel, B Mac.
Thank you, B Mac.
B Mac, appreciate you always bringing the goods, man. I know that Elliott's one of your favorite artists of all time, and I'm glad you're able to share this with us.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a very bleak, depressing, dark record.
It is.
We're gonna get into that and just the brilliance that Elliott showed on this record. Before we do that, though, if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. That helps us out, and hit that big red subscribe button if you haven't already. We upload every single day, and if you would like to have us maybe review a album or do a song reaction, check out our Patreon link, which is down below, and we can hook you up.
Yeah, exactly. We will get into the quick facts a little bit. This album was recorded between 2000 and 2003. It wasn't released until October of 2004, a year after Elliott died, which I'll get into those circumstances in a minute. Went to number 19 in the U.S.'s highest charting album, and also 88 on Metacritic, so the critics really enjoyed it. So the album was not anywhere close to being finished when Elliott died. It was supposed to be a double album. A lot of the songs were done. Some of the songs had all the instrumentation done, but not the lyrics. Obviously, they couldn't use those. Yeah. The estate brought in his ex-girlfriend Joanna and one of the producers of a few of his past albums, including EXO, Rob Schnapf, and they came in and mixed stuff up and did what they could with it. David McConnell, although present through much of the actual recording process of this album, was not consulted during the mixing, nor was he asked for the extensive 3 years worth of notes he and Smith had made while the album was being recorded. When asked why he personally took up the job of finishing the album, Rob stated, "I had a paternal protective feeling. I didn't want anybody mucking it up." When asked what Smith would have thought of the album, McConnell said, "I don't think he would have delivered this record. I think there would have been a lot more songs," which obviously that was the intention. The mixing would have been different, and he would have delivered more in-your-face stuff. Schnapf also expressed that the final result was what he and Joanna, the ex-girlfriend, had produced, was not the album that Smith would have made, simply because Elliott was not around to finish the album. Joanna said, "They did not add anything to the songs and only mixed whatever had been recorded. I would never presume to add anything. We didn't add anything." So now we get into this rabbit hole that I went down on how Elliott lost his life. First off, Elliott lived a lot of his life with severe depression, substance abuse. On his 34th birthday, he decided to give up not only the alcohol and the drugs, but a lot of his medications he was taking for the depression, also red meat, caffeine, anxiety, all of these things. And whenever you do that, that's a good step, but there's also a dangerous step, and you as a counselor know this, Trey, because now all of a sudden, all these things that were kind of masking and helping you cope.
It's just the emotional, trauma and whatnot. The depressions just hit you like a truck,
Exactly. It hit him face first. He died in October of 2003. In a very suspicious manner. He had got into an argument with his girlfriend. Now, this is a story she tells. His girlfriend, Jennifer, I'm going to say Chiba. I don't know how to pronounce her name. We'll say Jennifer. Jennifer says they got into an argument. She locked herself in the bathroom. This is the middle of the day. It's like noon. That's going to come into play in a minute. And then all of a sudden, she hears kind of a loud yell. She goes out and says she finds Elliott laying there with a knife in his heart. She pulls the knife out. Now, she'd been first aid trained, so she would have known not to pull the knife out. But I don't know how I'd react in that trauma, right? You freak out. But there's a couple weird things. He was stabbed twice in his heart. She's saying it was self-inflicted, it was suicide, and that's what about half the people believe. But one of the wounds was 5 to 7 inches deep, Trey. And even for somebody stabbing you, to get 5 to 7 inches deep in your heart, I read, is extremely hard to do. Some people theorize that he put a knife up against the wall and then he impaled himself on it, but to do that twice, and it was the first injury that was 5 to 7 inches deep. It's very strange.
Yeah, a lot of suspicion around
A lot of suspicion. So she calls the EMTs, they get there, and he actually died not from the stab wounds, but from bleeding to death because she pulled the knife out. And he might have died anyway, but he died 20 minutes after they got him to the hospital. So the case is still not closed. There's been no further investigation, I'm sure, in the world we live in. Some investigative person's going to put up a video of this and try to dig into this, but that's how Elliott lost his life. Very strange stuff, man.
Yeah, man, I'm just for my personal, as I dug into it, and I know B Mac shares my same thoughts. I lean toward it not being a suicide.
Oh, I lean towards that too. The odds that it was is very minimal.
Just very suspicious, and it is unfortunate that the case is still open in a sense, because I mean, it's been 17 years.
I think that if Elliott would, I hate to say this, but I think if Elliott would have been a bigger star, they would have dove into it more. Definitely. They just let it go and moved on to the next thing, man.
Well, man, after that, going to what B-Mac, who is a bit of a musician himself, man, I always like to hear what he has to say and how this record has affected the people we're doing these reviews for. He noted that Elliott sang and played nearly everything on this record himself, from strumming an acoustic guitar to piling up vocals to layering the distorted guitar chords. There's a seething instability in the songs, and thickly masked electric guitars can lunge into a pristine tune at any moment. The lo-fi yet meticulous arrangements only add to the sense of isolation and the poignancy of the songs. Elliott was a huge fan of the Beatles, and his voice suggests a more reclusive version of John Lennon, while his melodies rise and fall over chord progressions that, like Beatles songs, pivot from major to minor to major. See, that's why we need B-Mac up in here to give us some of these technical terms that might go over our heads.
Exactly.
The electric guitars are searing. The drums, especially the sound of them, are perfect. As Ray Davies commented about Elliott's drumming, quote, "Elliott is a songwriter's drummer, much like Ringo is." And on top of that, Elliott is a great pianist, and his acoustic playing is second to none. Bruce noted that he thinks this is Elliott's best record, and that had he been able to bring forth kind of his Beatles White Album-esque type of sound, that it might have even gained more traction than it has. But I always just like to kind of say,
I do too.
What the people were doing the review for, like how it affects them. So thank you, B-Mac, for sharing that. And now we're going to the track by track, 15 tracks on here, and we start off with Coast to Coast.
Yeah, and all tracks except for one, and I'll get to that in a little while. It's just a weird little track. Is written by Elliott, of course. In this one track, I think there's a relationship isn't good, but she won't cut him loose. At the end, Nelson Gary recites a poem, Exile in Paradise's Tourmaline. Smith told Under the Radar in 2003, "I asked this friend of mine to make up something he could say as fast as he could in 15 minutes about people healing themselves or being unable to heal themselves. While he's saying this, there's a main vocal that goes over it. The lyric, 'You're keeping me around until I finally drag us both down,' details a dysfunctional relationship. Starts with strings, then it builds up. Really nice guitars on this one, and then just rapid fire words on that poem at the end. I thought this was a really good way to start.
Yeah, I thought the poem was a cool touch at the end, and the intro was a bit eerie and bleak, which I mean fits the.
But then it surprised me when it went into those heavy guitars. I'm like, I didn't expect this.
Yeah, and you can tell Elliott is very frustrated here that this relationship's not going to work out, and yet he's resounded to the fact that he's gonna be alone. And man, I just again, some incredibly strong lyricism on here, which we'll get to many of his lyrics on the songs that are coming up, because they're just so heart-wrenching, and Elliott was not afraid to say what was on his mind.
No, he was not, man.
That's one of the reasons I respect him quite a bit. And now we take it to track number 2.
Yeah, Let's Get Lost, just acoustic here, which is kind of what I expected. Obviously I studied all the lyrics before I listened to the album, so when those heavy guitars on the last track, I was like, but this is more what I expected. He says he'll burn every bridge that he crosses. He had true love and let it die, and he pushed her away. Kind of his own worst enemy, Trey.
Yeah, he notes, "Well, I don't know where I'll go now, and I don't really care who follows me there." Here you got honest reflections from a guy who feels equal parts depressed and destructive on here, and here you can really tell those like chord progressions are just fantastic, and how great a guitar player that Elliott was on that acoustic.
For sure.
So I enjoyed this one, and now we go to the next song.
Pretty, and then in parentheses, Ugly before. This one was actually released as a single. Features backing vocals from his former Heat Miser bandmate Sam Combs. Previously released as a single in August of 2003. According to McConnell, Elliott did not intend to have it on the album. The Mellotron-like keyboard part during the intro was created using a Casio SK1 sampler, which a keyboard player, Aaron Embry, sang one note into, then spread the sample across the keyboard. It had no internal storage, so he had to do this every time he wanted to use the sound. Another interesting thing is Elliott recorded this in a room all by himself while the rest of the band was having dinner, because for as accomplished as he was still shy and nervous about singing in front of them. I thought that was interesting, even at this point in his career.
No, and here you again get a little to delve into the mind of an addict, because
he's high, right, and coming down. Is that what you took out of it? That's what I took out of it.
He enjoys being high, and yet whenever he feels ugly whenever he's not, and it's again pretty sad to hear. But I again appreciate the openness that Elliott showed on here. and I just thought it was a fantastic tune.
Yeah, I thought it was very rich musically. Yeah, and I think the fact that knowing he's coming off the high, now he's got to face life again, and so that does definitely give you a picture into the mind of the addict. Now we're going to go to Don't Go Down. He's singing about a girl who's a one of a kind, telling her to stay with him despite her parents objecting. I think we've all been there. Some think it's about freebasing cocaine, Trey. We got heavy instrumentation, almost Oasis-like in some part with the heavy guitars. I even got a little bit at the start of it, not as heavy as My Bloody Valentine on Loveless, but even a little feel of that at the start.
Well, yeah, the guitar work here is just fantastic,
It's
and the
tremendous.
cymbals on the drums just come in crashing at the right time, and really enjoy the music. One of my favorite, just musical tracks on this one, and again, going with the notion that this isn't an ideal situation, him and this gal, and yet
no, it's not.
Elliott still wants to, push against the world and be with her. So we're already getting a lot of different musical flavors here, and we're only a handful of tracks in.
We definitely are. We're going to go to the fifth track, Strung Out Again. Read the lyrics a bunch of times. I think it's pretty simple. I think it's just about him being high. He uses a bunch of cliches in here. It was okay for me.
You got a line, I know my place, hate my face, I know how I begin and how I'll end, strung out again. Elliott's not sure where this destructive path is going to end, but I think you had heavy distorted guitars in here, which again fit the subject matter quite well. I like this more than you did. I thought it was a very fantastic tune, actually, maybe one of my favorites. But then that takes us already to track number 6.
Which is one of my favorites, A Fawn Farewell. Actually, Frank Ocean interpolated part of this song on one of his tracks, Siegfried. The lyrics deal with themes of death and addiction. What a surprise, right? The chorus is a bleak farewell, which reads like the last words of a person disappointed in who they have become. I don't know, Trey, he might be telling heroin farewell, or at least addressing it. Acoustic driven, I think it sounds great.
Yeah, I think here he's noting the kind of in-between stage of where you're going to be an addict and going to be sober, and just that, just that awkwardness in that.
Yeah.
I thought the interplay between the electric and acoustic guitars was just wonderful. He has a really cool one-liner in here, a dead man in a living room. I just thought that was cool, too. That wordplay, I was like, I've never thought of something like that before, but, Elliott just litters the record with lines like that, so I'm with you, Dad. This was another great tune. I'm like a broken record. I thought the first half of this record especially was unbelievably strong.
Yeah, now it takes us to King's Crossing. Exploring music industry fears, self-doubt, and of course heroin abuse. He skillfully depicts a mental breakdown musically through the polarized nature of the composition of the song. There's voices at the start about the first 150s instrumental, voice and basically background choir, then instrumentation build. Pretty good. He was actually put in an institution in his real life for about a week in Arizona until he kept threatening him that he was going to sue them, and they finally released him. So he had some first-hand knowledge in this.
Yeah, this is, again, one of my favorites. I was actually familiar with this track beforehand, and I just think the opening 2 minutes where it's just a minute and a half with the instrumental, again, just is a bit out there, otherworldly, very musically dense and interesting. And then, you have Elliott personifying Santa as his heroin dealer.
His skinny,
man.
Called him Skinny. Yeah, Skinny Santa.
Coming to bring him a treat, and he notes he's gonna inject or meet his ex-wife, which is heroin. Essentially, talks about dealing with that, and he asks, give me one good reason not to do it, do heroin again, and if you hear a faint voice, because we love you, but then he goes and just says, something along the lines of, so I'm gonna do it, or something like that.
Exactly.
So, again, man, really heavy, powerful tune, and again, this will be one of my favorites whenever we come to the end there. And then we get the one song that Elliott didn't create on here. It's kind of an awkward song.
It is.
Made the track list.
Ostrich and Chirping. It's only 33 seconds long. Rob noted that the track, made from sampling and looping that noises made by a toy bird, had nothing to do with Elliott and was something that McConnell had recorded by himself. McConnell said, quote, "Don't ask me how this ended up on the record. I totally forgot I had put that on one of his reels." I'm with you, Trey. Strange to be here. That takes us to Twilight. As soon as the chaos from Ostrich and Chirping fades out, a subtle ambient noise fades in to start Twilight and remains in the background for its entirety. Some chirping crickets. Drug theme, of course. acoustic, really nice. This one's one of my favorites on here.
Yeah, this was, again, another, just in the run of this record, just another solid tune here. And he notes that, he sees this gal, she's pretty, but Elliott's already somebody's baby, and who's that? That's drugs, man. He notes here, you don't deserve to be lonely, but those drugs you got won't make you feel better. Pretty soon you'll find it's the only little part of your life you're keeping together. I just thought that was an unbelievably
that's a great
powerful line, and I'm sure resonates with a lot of people that have dealt with substance abuse through their lives and how it permeates their relationships and life in general.
Now we're going to go to a passing feeling. It's about depression, and guess what? Probably about drugs as well. It was okay for me. It's hard coming off this last song.
Yeah, this isn't a favorite of mine or anything, but I thought the piano here was a highlight. I enjoyed how it crescendoed along with Elliott's voice. He had the electric guitar being able to shine in the last minute.
Yeah.
And again, I appreciated the candor of Elliott noting how he's hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, and that takes us to the last hour, which basically he loves her. Yeah. But he knows she's never going to love him the same, which if you're ever in that situation, it's kind of a helpless feeling. Mainly acoustic and chilled, which is kind of what it has to be for the subject matter.
No, man, again, shows the proficiency Elliott has with the acoustic guitar.
Definitely.
That domineering relationship, again, is permeating Elliott's life. I don't have too much to add here. It was solid, but with how strong the rest of the songs on this record were, on a normal record, it would be, like one of the top ones, but here it's just middle of the road for me.
Next up, Shooting Star. Basically, he's telling her that he knows that they're over and that she messed him over, and she's going to do it over and over again, whether it's him or whether it's somebody else. This is the one track I wasn't really feeling. What'd you think of it?
I actually enjoyed the electric guitar, especially maybe the best electric guitar work on the record.
Definitely a heavier track, that's for sure.
And that third verse seems a little bit more maybe rehabilitation-esque in nature, trying to get back after this girl screwed him over, essentially. And then that takes us, we only got... we're nearing the end of this record.
We are nearing the end of it. Takes us to Memory Lane, which is kind of Elliott's explanation of memories. Life on, quote, Memory Lane is a street where one must come to grips with who they are and what they've done. His metaphoric use of a, quote, house on Memory Lane helps explain a place where you can go to find out more about yourself. From midway through the song, you realize that he is battling these demons from a hospital. Has he been committed? I don't know, Trey. Is he there by his own free will? He says, this is the place you end up when you lose the chase, when you're dragged against your will from a basement on the hill. So that's where we get this title from. For me, I thought great lyricism. It was just okay for me as a song. But there's 15 songs on here, man. So when I say okay, it doesn't mean it's a bad song at all. It's just, you're trying to rank and kind of stack all these up.
Yeah, one of the more upbeat melodies, which, I always like when artists do that, have an upbeat melody contrasted with the very bleak lyrics, which this definitely has. Notes that whenever you're honest with your feelings, sometimes the bad things can happen, man. And so I appreciated that. He packed more emotion, I think, in these 2.5 minutes than most artists do on entire records.
I agree, and I think
their careers.
It's probably some, autobiographical stuff from what I mentioned earlier about being committed and everything else. That's going to take us to Little One. It's pretty simple. I think it's about smoking heroin. Yeah. Once again, it was okay for me.
Yeah, you got the layered vocals, which give this a hazy and angelic quality at times. Had a slight, almost indie psychedelic feel, almost a little Revolver influence. We had a backwards guitar here. This was almost like a lullaby, which, again, kind of a bit ironic with the subject matter here. But I love the fact that he did that. I enjoyed this one, and that takes us now to our closing track.
It does. A distorted reality is now a necessity to be free. And this sums up things quite nicely. Yeah. He's basically talking about the heroin and how he kind of needs it to deal with life. But then he flips a little bit and talks about his country doesn't care about him.
I liked how he did that.
Because he's an addict. It's really true because we live in such a judgmental, not just country, but world. Like, oh, well, you're an addict, so you're somehow some second-class citizen. Although in a lot of ways, it could happen to almost anybody. Yeah. And if you're watching this going, it never happened to me, guess what? Then it probably could happen to you. But
exactly.
You never know. But I thought this was a wonderful way to cap off this album. I know he didn't put it together, but I thought they did a wonderful job. You would never know, or at least for me, that these songs did not go go together in this sequential way.
The track list, they did a fantastic
job.
And I'm with you, Dad. I thought it was a fitting closer, both thematically, kind of wrapping up the drug themes and topics, and also musically, the acoustic and just the his layered vocals, just the interplay of all the instrumentation was just effortless. So I thought this was a great closer, and that'll now take us to our favorite tracks.
Yeah, well, the previous song, A Fawn Farewell, Twilight, and Coast to Coast.
Yeah, I'm going to go with King's Crossing. We got Pretty Ugly Before, Strung Out Again, and then A Fond Farewell. Shout out to Memory Lane as well.
So we only have one of the same favorites. That's pretty cool.
Well, that shows you how varied this record is.
It does.
At points. And now that'll take us to our overall score of the album, man. For me, I was familiar with Elliott's first three records, and Either Or is one of my favorite records of the 90s, man. And though this record, I don't think I like it more than that. It's just one little notch below it. So I'm going a really strong 8.75 on this album. I think the fact that Elliott was so honest. This is one of the most depressing, bleak records you're ever going to hear, lyrically at least. And the fact that he was able to play all the acoustic, the drums, the awesome layered vocals, the electric guitar. I was just really impressed by the fact he was able to do that, switch up everything, kind of like B-Mac was talking at the start with the chord progressions and all that. So I was really impressed by it. I know your mileage may vary if you're not an Elliott Smith fan, and his vocal delivery is a little unique sometimes. I know that's a hang up for some people, but I would check this out if you're a fan of Elliott and haven't delved into it.
Well, I'm going to be a full grade below you at 7.75 and still say I really, really like this album. I don't know any Elliott except for what we played in our live streams. I want to dig into his whole discography, and I'm going to. I'm going through a couple other people's, and there's only so much time in the day to listen to music. I'll say a couple things here, though. There's a lot of controversy about this album. Some people see it, and I as you dive through the lyrics and as you listen to it, it's his goodbye piece. Like, he knew this was going to happen, and I don't necessarily think that's it. I think it's a guy who was kind of searching and really honestly facing his demons. So I don't necessarily think you need to listen to it and think of it as almost a suicide note, as people have said. But I think it's an awesome piece of artistry, and the fact that he did, as you mentioned, play everything, layer everything. I mean, it's just great admiration he was able to do that. And really stinks that this is the last thing that we have from him. But I'll tell you what, if this is the last thing that you're going to have from somebody, it's a pretty darn good thing to have.
Oh, definitely, man. Well said, Dad. And let us know what you think of this record, y'all, down in the comments section below. Want to shout out B-Mac again for bringing this to us. Want to shout out you, Dad, for diving into these songs and the research behind
this one was, it was really interesting, especially the part how he passed.
And I guess that'll wrap it up for us today, y'all. Appreciate y'all watching. Happy listening, my friends. Until next time, we will see ya.